and continue our journey through the liturgical seasons of the church year, which began all the way back in Advent, that season of seeming darkness in which we wait for light, for incarnation, in which we ask ourselves, what form is that going to take in our lives? What sort of space can we make, should we make, for God to more nearly enter in and to participate into who we are called to be? Then, of course, the miracle of the incarnation happens. Christmas morning dawns, and we are given the gift of God becoming a human being. Perhaps the central theology to the Anglican Church, that the creation that God made is so good. The world is inherently so special. You and I are inherently so loved that God came among us, became a human being to show us how to live more fully into humanity, to fill that space in our souls and in our lives that only God can fill. Of course, even in the midst of celebrating the incarnation, our spiritual eyes yearn for the bright light of Epiphany, that guiding star, that image that speaks to us of a direction, of a hope, of a brightness enkindled in ourselves that we are to spread into the world, to make known that great gift of incarnation, to tell the world, to focus on all that is good and true, and to try in our own lives to live out of that very space ourselves. This morning, as we find ourselves in the season of Lent, it's a bit of an applied process. What do I mean by that? Lent is about trying on for size what that light means in our lives. How far we can take it. What we can let it do. We often take on some discipline, or from a spiritual standpoint, let something go so that we can focus more nearly on God. Lent is a time of taking our faith out for a test drive, if you will, and seeing how it's going to hold up amidst the rigors of the world. My friends, I have to tell you, and I'm glad you're sitting down, but if we think about it, we already know, we're going to fail. We're set up for that. We're broken people. We're a broken world. We're going to try. We're going to take that test drive out for a spin and see what good we can make of the gift that God gives us, knowing full well our best efforts are going to pale in comparison to what God really has intended for us. We do not know where the wind comes and blows, as the gospel tells us. We just know that the true wind is coming from God that fills the sails of our hearts and inspires us to move onward, despite the fact we're going to be tripping, and we're going to be bumbling, and we're going to be sinking like Peter did in the Sea of Galilee, and needing to reach out out for God's hand. Because no matter how hard we try, no matter how much we think we can do, we get in the way. We put ourselves, however subconsciously, in the place of wanting to be in charge, of feeling as though we're somehow in command, that test drive is all about the bells and whistles we're going to know about as we get to know our new vehicle. But yet, it's going to be a long time with the owner's manual before we can figure out how to make the windshield wipers go from constant to delay, much less to automatic. My friends, we get in our own way. We get in our own way as we look about the world and we try to do good. We're trying to meet the challenges in a responsible manner of the coronavirus that's come into our midst. And we will do that with every gift that we have. Yet we know that ultimately that little pesky thing can get in all kinds of places we haven't even imagined yet. We're not in control of it. We only can try to be in control of what is humanly possible. This past few months, I've been struggling in my life with trying to find control over what's going to happen with all of the things I've accumulated in my apartment over the years, all of the stuff that comes with being an only child and 30 years of parents who were both educated in the museum profession, not a profession I can tell you taken easily to letting things go. Trying to figure out what to let go and what to hold on to and where to put things and who to give things to and what's the best, most appropriate use of this and that. It can be exhausting. And finally, I have to tell myself from time to time, well, I'm doing the best I can and God will help me, but if a few things wind up out at the curb that my parents might not have agreed with, they wound up at the curb anyway. It's a time of trying to do one's best. We're going to be looking as a congregation at who we are in the next few months, in the next year, who we want to be, looking at our gifts and our challenges and the needs we have as a church and as a community and as a world. And coming out of the woodwork are going to be all kinds of wonderful ideas and inspiring thoughts and ways to do this and ways to do that and things to get ready and things to let go and things to take on and things to make better and things, oh my gosh, you get the idea. The things that will come. But the wind blows where it will. Being born from above is acknowledging our weakness and putting ourselves in the hands of God. Some of you know I have amongst the many things that my father and I have collected over the years, incredible number of little Britain miniature soldiers. And my favorites are the ones that are the ceremonial soldiers, all the red coats and the bearskin hats and the shining breastplates on the cavalry officers and those beautiful carriages. I love my collection of little carriages. And a British state event is one I love to watch. And I have to confess, just last night I watched a rerun of the royal wedding yet again. I'm not going to confess how many times I've done it because they just make it seem so perfect and you wish you could be that perfect, but you know you never can. And the Bishop of London stood up there, and I think there's an irony in the juxtaposition of the words that he used And the words of the commentator from the BBC. The BBC commentator was trying very hard to be politically correct by referring to parts of Westminster Abbey as holy places, as sacred places, as this is a ceremony of an affirmation of life, and saying all the right things. And the Bishop of London stands up and says, we're gathered this morning on the feast day of Catherine of Siena, who says if we embrace God with all our heart, we can set the world on fire. And then he leaves the congregation to ponder what it means to set the world on fire with the love of God. And then the royal party comes out, and the great carriages come up, and the soldiers march out, and the commentator's overwhelmed, and he says, oh, this is what it's really all about. This is why people come to England every year. This is the pomp. This is the circumstance. This is what really means. Oh, and then he qualifies it quickly as he realizes that it doesn't mean just that flash. What it means is the flash of fire that is the love of God that is burning in us, that is going to set the world aflame this Lent, despite ourselves. And you know, my friends, it's just fine. It's just fine that we get in the way. It's absolutely 1,000% okay. Because the feast that follows Lent is Easter. And Easter is empowerment. It's forgiveness. Easter is understanding its resurrection. It's saying, God will pick us up. God will send us where we need to go. God will give us what we need to do when we get there. Easter takes us beyond and sets us into the next phase of our liturgical season. But that's another sermon, and we haven't gotten to Easter, much less Pentecost yet. So perhaps it's time just to linger in Lent for a moment and realize that sometimes, more often than not, it's we who get out